Israeli President Isaac Herzog is visiting the United States. His upcoming meeting with U.S. President Joe Biden at the White House is second under 10 months and is more than ceremonial this time. It comes against the backdrop of growing U.S. criticism of the Israeli government for initiating a controversial legislation meant to limit the power of the Supreme Court. The ongoing construction in the occupied West Bank during his visit, Israeli President Herzog will also meet Vice President Kamala Harris and congressional leaders. On Wednesday, he will become the second Israeli president after his father to address the U.S. Congress. His speech will mark Israel's celebration of its 75th years of independence. According to White House officials, the meeting between the two leaders is seen as an opportunity to strengthen an already ironclad relationship, further adding that the leaders will discuss how to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons. But the declaration of mutual respect has masked strains between the two countries. The Biden administration is frustrated with Netanyahu's position on Israeli settlements and efforts to overhaul the judicial system. Despite this, Prime Minister Netanyahu has been impatiently waiting for his turn to meet President Biden for the first time in Washington since he returned to office in December. Netanyahu's invite came just hours before Herzog's flight, when President Biden phoned Prime Minister Netanyahu, though it's not clear that a White House sit-down is on the table. Interestingly, the invitation to Prime Minister Netanyahu comes after New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman warned in the column that the Biden administration is reassessing its ties with the Netanyahu government. Friedman wrote that Biden believes Prime Minister Netanyahu's government is using its judicial overhaul push as a smokescreen to engage in unprecedented radical behavior. He says that this is undermining the shared interests with Israel. Okay, for more on this, we are being joined by Dr. Alon Bernstein from Tel Aviv. Dr. Bernstein is a visiting assistant professor and Israel Institute fellow at the University of California, Irvine. Welcome to WION, and good to talk to you. I had to double check to see if the Biden administration is really hypocritically criticizing another government for trying to overhaul its judicial system and Supreme Court. It sounds uncannily similar to what the left here in the United States wants to do to our Supreme Court. So I want to get your opinion about the Biden administration's stance and how justified is it for it to be concerned about what Netanyahu is doing in Israel?
So first of all, thank you for having me. It's a great question, albeit a very complex one. Israel and the United States have, for many, many years, what they call special relationship. Israel considers the United States its strongest ally. The United States gives billions upon billions of dollars to Israel in military aid and protects Israel in international bodies. So there really is this sort of dynamic where, on the one hand, the two countries are independent, and in Israel there's a lot of voices that are saying the United States should not criticize Israel for internal matters. On the other hand, what the Netanyahu government is trying to do is push forth legislation that is going to severely curtail the Supreme Court's ability to restrain the government at all. It's a very different system than the United States, and the government will really be able to enact legislation or carry out operations, military operations, either in the West Bank or the Gaza Strip, without any restraint from the Supreme Court, something that should legitimately bother the United States if they are protecting Israel in international bodies, if they're giving Israel a lot of financial aid. So while there is this pushback from Israel also saying, don't criticize us, it's an internal matter, the United States does have good legitimate reasons to be concerned in light of their special relationship.
Very interesting. Thank you for that. Dr. Bernstein, can you talk about your views on the future of U.S.-Israeli relations? It seems like Prime Minister Netanyahu is not going anywhere anytime soon.
It certainly does not seem like Netanyahu is going anywhere anytime soon, although his coalition right now, as President Biden pointed out, is considered one of the most radical or extreme coalitions that have been in Israel's history. So it's unclear how long this coalition specifically will last. I think a lot depends on the 2024 elections. Netanyahu, since the Obama administration, has sort of driven Israel and the Israeli alliance more and more towards the Republican Party. And we saw between Netanyahu and Trump this sort of very loving relationship that an Israeli leader and a U.S. leader had not had for a long time. But this also caused alienation within the Democratic Party. Now, President Biden came in and he has a long history of being a staunch supporter of Israel, and he had full intentions to bring back the support, the United States support for Israel as a bipartisan idea. But a lot depends on what happens in the next election. Right now, Israel between Netanyahu and Biden is some of the worst relations that an Israeli prime minister has ever had with a U.S. president. Netanyahu has broken the record negatively of a prime minister not being invited to the United States, an Israeli prime minister not being invited. And really, President Herzog's invitation, and in Israel, the president, unlike in the United States, is just a ceremonial role. He's not the head of the executive. And the president being invited is really almost an additional slap in the face to Netanyahu. It's coming and saying, we still support Israel in the United States. We still love Israel. We don't like you. We don't want you to come, whereas we're going to invite other leaders that actually are not leading the country, but they're ceremonial. We're going to invite them and give them respect. So right now, the relationship is really at an all-time low. It will likely change as the legislation either in Israel either moves forward and the judicial overhaul continues or is halted. That'll have a big influence. But a lot's really going to depend on the elections in 2024. And if we see a return of the Republicans to the White House, everything's likely to change. If we see the Democrats continuing to control the White House, chances are, depending on what happens in Israel, the relationship will continue to deteriorate, as Thomas Friedman did in fact predict.
Fascinating. All eyes on 2024, no matter which direction we take or what stories we do. Dr. Alon Burstein, thank you so much for joining us from Tel Aviv and your thorough analysis. I look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Me too. Thank you. Have a great day.